Obviously, Michigan and J.J. McCarthy. You think about that stat, by the way, pretty impressive. His previous long touchdown pass coming into that game against Ohio State was for 42 yards. Well, all he did was throw 3 such touchdown passes of beyond that length. Unbelievable. 45 yards or more on those 3 touchdown passes, a couple of them real long there. Obviously, Ohio State was hell-bent on trying to stop a vaunted Michigan running game. And that is a vaunted Michigan running game who had to do it without their star tailback for most of this football game. It's interesting. You look at the big picture. I was talking with a Michigan guy the other day, and I obviously try to check in on all the different On3 markets and talk with those programs and those that cover those programs for On3. And, we think about where Michigan was just 3 or 4 years ago, just 3 years ago, really. And to think where they are now, it worked out. Patience won the day, and Michigan now is the class of the Big Ten. I see Anthony Broome is in. We'll segue over now to him. He's joined us throughout the season. Anthony, good morning again. It's always a pleasure to be with you on Sunday mornings, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing great. A little bit of a different setup today as my house gets Christmased out. But yeah, it's been got back from Columbus late last night. What a run this has been. I think one of the first times you and I talked, I was kind of lamenting over how fast the season has gone, and now for Michigan, there's just so much left to play for still. So it's been crazy. Been a ride.
You got the upcoming Big Ten championship game. And then, of course, most Michigan fans are looking at a thought at maybe playing for and winning a national title. And I was just saying before you came on, and you and I have had this discussion before, kind of monitored it along the way. And folks, if you guys read the Wolverine, you know that. But I got to tell you, it blows me away to think about where Michigan was a couple of years ago and whether or not, before that season a year ago, whether or not it was the right move to stick with Harbaugh. Was he going to go to the NFL at some point? How would that affect the classes? All those things. And yet here he is now. He stayed the course, went back to his roots. It's a bludgeoning brand of football. You're getting big wins against rivals, undefeated seasons. He's riding high atop college football right now. That's a rather good case study in staying the course.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes time too. And we'll see what history says about Jim Harbaugh and Michigan as it pertains to the Ohio State rivalry. But right now it kind of just looks like Urban Meyer was his boogeyman, which, I mean, Urban Meyer's a top 5 coach, maybe in the sport period ever at his peak. So not making excuses for that, but, staying the course and doubling down on your process and sticking to what got you there. I mean, Michigan has modernized its offensive attack. I mean, they're still smash mouth, but, there are things they've done to bring it into how football is played now. But, the fact of the matter is, and I feel like I've said this on here too, or at least on my podcast a few times, or our show on the Wolverine, when you're able to control the line of scrimmage, like Michigan is able to on both sides of the football, your style can work against any type of team you play. Mm-hmm. And that's been the most striking thing to me is that, oftentimes, this is a program and a fan base that measures itself against Ohio State. And there's always been this idea that you had to fight fire with fire, and that you were going to your offense is going to have to turn into what their offense is. And over the last 2 years, they've proved that not only does the way they want to play work, but when Ohio State yesterday tried to take away the things that Michigan wants to do well, Michigan was able to pivot and got the best quarterback performance it's gotten out of J.J. McCarthy this year. Guys stepped up and made plays, and we'll see what it means for the recruiting trail. Personally, I mean, I think Michigan needs to, if you want to hold off this NFL dalliance that seems to happen, at least happened last year, keep doubling down, triple down, quadruple down, pay him, make him the highest paid coach in the Big Ten. Get your NIL and recruiting efforts in order, because yesterday proved that this is something that can be sustainable for them. Last year, there was a bit of magic in what happened last year. This year was completely earned and showed that everything that happened that preceded it was not a fluke. And now, as a result, coming off that COVID season, you're 24-2 in the last 26 games. It is the most stunning coaching turnaround I think I've ever seen in sports. I mean, we're talking about a regime that was dead in the water during that COVID season, which has proven to be kind of a Mickey Mouse campaign now. But at the same time, It showed enough cracks in what was going on at Michigan to fortify that and push forward. And just a remarkable turnaround.
I think it's a great point. Yeah, you talk about the COVID year. You can look all over the country and see very strange results. And obviously, if you're for a coach or against a coach, you can use those results as your case study. But it seems a little unfair. I mean, after all, Indiana was one of the best teams during the COVID season. I think we realize Indiana stinks. So there is that, and it was a byproduct of COVID. And some other great programs struggled during COVID. Others that were not named programs had a great resurgence. Harbaugh now has solidified, as you said, that they are there. They are the team right now to beat in the Big Ten. And by the way, you mentioned J.J. McCarthy. I remember the first time you and I talked about him, he was coming off a less than stellar game. I believe it was against Maryland. And at that time, he had some interesting choices. But you pointed out at that time, hey, he's a young quarterback. These guys are going to make mistakes. They're going to have room to grow. They're going to have to, you're going to watch them grow on the job. Well, man, I mean, this is a moment that will last forever, no matter what he does moving forward. Michigan fans will love J.J. McCarthy. He goes out, throws 3 touchdown passes of 45 yards or more. His previous long on the season was 42. And it's right after it became abundantly clear that Ohio State was going to try to decide to take everything in the run game away. And obviously you had to loosen them up in the pass game. It worked. Then you turned around and were able to run the ball big time after that as well. So he grew up in a hurry. Talk about his maturation.
For him, I think it's yesterday you saw why they turned the page to J.J. McCarthy. And it's not a Cade McNamara criticism. He is as much of a legend in Michigan lore as McCarthy is now, being the first quarterback to go into to beat Ohio State in 10 years. McNamara was. Now McCarthy's the first to beat them at Ohio State since the year 2000. So 2 legends in very different ways in terms of how important they are to this turnaround. But with McCarthy, we saw what Jim Harbaugh saw. In that Georgia game last year where you just get destroyed up front, really for the first time all year. Cade McNamara comes in, and if you're not able to run the ball, that kind of killed the offense. This year it was, if things break down and teams take the run away, which I know Ohio State really was the first team for 3.5 quarters all season that is by and large took the run away from Michigan. It got out of hand late there, but what McCarthy allows you to do is when you need to zigzag as an offense, you need to throw the ball to win the game. You need your quarterback to make a play with his arm, make a play with his legs. You're able to do that. And, Jim Harbaugh said coming into the week, he was going to let him have at it. And I'd stop short of saying that there have been shackles on McCarthy this year, but there has been a little bit of reining him in. He's a little bit, coming out of the gate, a little bit reckless with the football, but only 2 interceptions on the season through 12 games. He's been efficient. The accuracy has slipped a bit in recent weeks, but, Michigan teams have been able to take the pass away a little bit more and force Michigan to run with an extra guy in the box. And most of the year they've been able to do that. But yesterday was a star-making turn for him, and it was remarkable. I mean, the deep balls needed to be on the money. They were. McCarthy has talked about all year about, quote-unquote, leaving meat on the bone in terms of leaving big plays on the field. They had 2 75-yard touchdowns yesterday. They had an 85-yard touchdown. They had a 45-yard touchdown. I'm missing 1 or 2 in there somewhere. A 69-yard touchdown. Like the meat was not only chewed off the bone, they chewed it and then spit out the bone. So it's remarkable. It's his, and he has so much more room to grow too. He's only a sophomore, which is the craziest part about it. There's another level for him to go to, and he took a huge step yesterday.
Nothing but confidence from this point forward. You go on the road and win in Columbus against that team in that situation with that pressure, with all that's on the line, and you perform the way he did. You got to imagine that's another launching pad for him. Final thing before I let you go, Anthony, this morning. Any worry about what Purdue brings to the table? Most of us from the outside would look at this game and kind of think it's a ho-hum game, that Michigan should run away with it, shouldn't be much of a contest. I don't know if you see it that way. Obviously, you're there covering the Big Ten, covering Michigan for us at the Wolverine all year long. Anything about that matchup that would concern Michigan fans?
They like to throw the ball. That's what they're going to do. And I think that plays into Michigan's hand. I think that there are a lot of people that prefer certainly prefer this matchup to Iowa. Even, the way that Iowa turns you over and plays the type of defense that they do. Michigan was able to overcome that in Kinnick earlier this year, but not something, just a physical style of play, and a team that has, for a team that's still kind of banged up. Illinois, same deal. Smash Mouth, kind of the Spider-Man meme, so to speak, two teams pointing at each other. So Purdue is going to give them something a little bit different. I'm not sure if they're quite as good as Maryland was. Again, everything's kind of graded on a curve out in the Big Ten West, but somewhere between what they've seen with Indiana and Maryland, and to a certain extent Ohio State. So I think this is the matchup that I think coming into Saturday, if you're going, okay, if Michigan beats Ohio State, they're going to Indy. There's 3 teams they could see. I think they're getting the team that plays most in their hand in terms of what they do well. So, last year felt like a coronation, even with Iowa in that Big Ten title game. This year feels somewhat similar, but except I think maybe even more business-like, because last year was getting over the hump, and there's a lot of emotion with that win over Ohio State. I mean, this team refocused like that overnight, and they're ready to go out and do it again. So I don't see a path to an upset here. I don't. So we'll see what happens.
Probably going to be talking to you if I get the chance next week after a Big Ten championship victory for Michigan. For those that want the best in covering Michigan football, make sure you follow Anthony Broome. Go to the Wolverine, read his stuff. That staff really, really doing a great job for us at On3. Be well, Anthony. Thanks again for the time, and enjoy the Big Ten championship.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.